Hey, you found the Rebirth podcast. I'm Kate Breton, your host. This podcast became a book and you can find it on Amazon as well as wherever your favorite local bookstore is, so you can bring the inspiration into your own community. Thank you for finding us. If you're new here, this is season 7. We're going to be focusing on education and elevation. And if you've been here for a while, thank you. This community is uplifting and helps spread the word that the life that we want is possible. Our first guest for season 7 is the perfect spark to making what we envision come into our life. Ceil Arias is a growth and strategies coach for business. She has a unique skill set that, personally, I think that she is dynamic and grounded. Like, I always feel like I could ask her anything. I won't be judged. I could ask a silly question. I can meet her in the esoteric, and she can look at me and say, you're not running your numbers, all in a 15-minute expanse. And you'll get that. In this episode, we drop right into the conversation, and I share that, I felt emboldened to ask Celi all kinds of questions because I know her soulful grounding, that she believes that we're all here for a purpose. And I got to learn how she sees numbers. And if you are a person that's afraid of numbers, Celi is going to rewrite that story for you. She is going to rewrite that story in this next episode, so stick around. What you want to do, if you're curious, is you want to head on over to her website, which is her name, and I'll put that in our show notes. Scoot on down to her at the end of the website. She asks one really succinct question for all of our entrepreneurs and business owners. Is your business scalable? Then there's a little button that says take the quiz and find out. It's worth the 5 minutes if you are curious about what she's doing. And if you want to work with her, she says at the end of the episode, you can DM her to be on her Tipsy Tuesday, where she does lives on Instagram where people can problem solve their businesses, for everyone to benefit. You can also schedule a time to work with her if you're interested in going into her group coursework. But the first place to really start, aside from her Instagram and this podcast, staying here for that, is to take the quiz. Ask the questions. Let her lead you through looking at your business and looking at your purpose and looking at your numbers in a different way. I am so glad you found your way here to the Rebirth podcast. Enjoy the upcoming episode. You think you know yourself. You're like, oh yeah, Celi does these things and she's really intelligent. And then I went on and saw that you were like uplifting people in ways I had no idea. And so I'm so glad to have you on here, because I know that you're a tremendous person and an incredible businesswoman. But I think what's really unique in what you're offering is that you're braiding both your values and your integrity in your business in a way that can really help people. So I'm really glad to have you here on Rebirth.
Oh, thank you. I love the way you use words and the way you say things, because you always say things in a way where I'm like, yeah, that's what I do. Okay.
So tell us, if someone was like, okay, she sounds great, but I don't know who Celi is. So what do you do? Like, if someone said, how do you spend your time? When you spend your time with your clients, what do you do?
What I like to say now, which is, how do you synthesize when you've done a lot of things in business and you've brought them all together, right? So what I like to say is I'm a business growth expert. Mm-hmm. And by way of focusing on strategy, operations, and spirituality. That's the shortest.
Those 3 categories again for me, please.
Strategy, mm-hmm. operations, mm-hmm. and spirituality.
So for the listeners, only the last category is the one that I was like, wait, she's speaking my language. And I like subversively scheduled like this little session with Celi. I'm like, Celi, how are you doing this? Like, how are you? And this is about me, not about you. This is for listener. I was fascinated that you were not simply using a lot of adjectives and a lot of bright colors to convince me that I could change my business. And I think that for someone that's a service-based person, that to hear that spirituality is not divorced from strategy and operations, I knew it was true. And I could feel intrigued that my wiring had not experienced the collab. Like, I knew it in my heart, it's true, but I didn't have anyone that told me in a concrete skills, tangible business way that was true. And I would love for you to talk more about that, because I think that's the essence of where we're headed. Like everyone should be making the money, but you don't have to be squashing people while you're doing it. Right.
Oh, absolutely. I'm so glad this is my favorite subject. So yay. Yeah, I think people are like, what? You just said like systems and spirituality in the same sentence. What are you talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I'm like, this is literally my world. This is where I play and where I thrive. Because I think we don't realize there's so many ways we can unpack this. But let's talk about the spirituality and the way we learn and the way we grow and the way we transcend,
Mm-hmm.
right? We use systems to do so. So, I mean, if you've, I've studied theology and I've been studying world religions since I was like 12, thanks to a confirmation teacher I had in Catholic school who was like, if you're gonna, yeah, it was beautiful. I was like, I wish I remembered this man's name because I owe him so much, because he was like, hey, 12-year-olds, if you're going to get confirmed, I think that you should have an awareness of all the religions of the world.
Beautiful.
So instead of spending a year studying what you'd normally study at that age, he brought in a Buddhist speaker, a Hindu, a Muslim. Like I got really into Rumi at the age of like 13 because of him.
Alone. Yeah.
Right.
Amazing.
And so without getting into a religious debate.
But let me just say this. So really, when you're starting to individuate, you were already fascinated by, I'll say, religious structure. Is that fair? Because if we're going to be talking about systems and strategy, you were already fascinated about how humans understood or made meaning. Is that what you're sort of?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. I mean, okay. Fun fact, right? Like one of the first things that God teaches Adam to do in the Bible is what?
I don't know. Don't eat the apple.
Name things.
Oh, I love where this is going.
He actually gives him the job of naming everything. Right? It's like one of the first, like, right? We're like, oh, wait. Systems are everywhere.
I have never. I am blown away in this moment. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah. So what I love, I mean, I'm a spiritual person. I believe in God and the universe and she and whatever word you want to put on it. But what I love about religions is that they all have their rituals and their steps to transcendence and transformation.
Well said. I agree with you. Mm-hmm.
And rituals are a system.
I totally, and necessary for the human spirit in business, in personal reflection, and markings of system, like phases. It's really helpful for your consciousness. Okay, so I'm tracking you. I see how you're doing these two things. Okay.
So I think what happened in my journey in my life was there was this part of me that loved spirituality and loved religion and was constantly learning different practices and training in them. And
like for real training, like for the audience, right? Like
for real. Yeah, for real training. Like when I was very young, I was training to be a Jiva Mukti yoga teacher, which has its own, spiritual teachings. I went to seminary later in life. Really, like when I was younger, I thought I was going to be a nun. Fun fact, really did. I really loved church. I loved going into any church. I still love going into any church. I went to seminary later. And then there was this other part of me, this other brain, or so I thought, that loved organization and creating structure and creating ease for people and creating processes and systems that make things easy.
Can you tell us a little bit about, like, if I insert myself a little into your story, can you, like, when you didn't continue with seminary or in that moment, like what was some of your business background, so that when you say you're organizing systems, can you give us a peek into like what the platform was, like what you're...
Yeah, so it's kind of funny. So I studied dance in college and was always the dancer, and I've danced professionally, but I was always that dancer in the group that actually helped the company do admin work.
Oh,
right. And I was always that person who could dance and then who could also turn on the left brain and like put an Excel sheet together or whatever. I started my first business when I was 24 and I ran a business. I ran a global fashion, it turned into global. I ran a global fashion line for 8 years.
That's right.
Because my creative brain saw a need in a particular niche market, and my business structured brain literally immediately went, I could do that. I can build that. I can create the fashion line that answers this need, and I can build the business. And so
That's a gift that both sides are talking to each other.
Yes, and I didn't. And so here's what's interesting: is my whole life I thought it was a battle. Until, to use your word, I was like, oh, they can be braided. That's really fascinating. And part of why I thought it was a battle is because we live in a world where we're constantly being told by our parents and school and society that you're either creative or you're a numbers person.
Yeah, pick a lane. You can't
pick a lane.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many times I was told my whole life, like, Celi, just pick one thing, pick a lane. And a lot of times being told, you're so smart, pick this lane over here, pick the business.
That's the next thing to avoid, right? The prescriptive lane choosing. Got it.
Right? Because you're so smart,
right?
You should be over here in business and
so that's interesting. So if I'm hearing you correctly, because one of the things that I feel that you're doing for a wide range of entrepreneurs is like, pick a lane. If you're smart, make money over here. And you're kind of saying, pick your lane and we can make money anywhere. Is that also where we're?
That's literally what I say. People are like, just give me the formula. When people come to me and are like, my old coach just literally gave me something to copy and paste. Give me the copy and paste. And I'm like, no.
Celi doesn't do that. No, for sure.
No, because that's the fastest route to burnout and exhaustion and heartbreak, because you're building somebody else's business. And I'm not interested in that. But let's build your business and let's make you the money that you want and are worthy of, doing the thing that you love in your way.
Okay, wait, I want them to know, I want the audience to know. So not only did you do the fashion line, but then you also worked in a company of, right? Didn't you?
Yes. So I did a fashion line for about 8 years, and throughout my 20s worked 7 days a week throughout my entire 20s pretty much, and was exhausted by the time I was 31 or 32. And so I thought, oh, I clearly don't know enough about business. I must need, now I'm probably ready to get an MBA because I don't know enough.
Got it. Okay.
So this was in South America. I was in Argentina when I had my first business, and I moved back to the States to get an MBA. And in that journey, I sold off my inventory and sold off my business and worked at a startup. So I worked at a startup for a little bit as a marketing director and was asked to build SOPs, which are standard operating procedures. So I learned, I was like, yeah, duh, I can do that. So I started doing operations for this company and learning that, oh, my brain likes doing this kind of stuff. And then that company, it was a manufacturing company, and they closed. And so then I got a corporate sales and partnership job for a luxury brand. And so I've gotten to be the founder of a startup, work in a startup, and work in luxury corporate.
I mean, you're being groomed by the universe to understand systems. I mean, I say that in a loving way. Like, I believe life does that if you allow it. You might not see it in the moment, but when you look back, I mean, groomed, maybe curate is a kinder word, right? Like, they're like, okay, since you're listening, we're going to move you here, 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 and here, and then you look back and you start to see it. Yeah,
I love that. I'm actually like, yeah, I was being groomed by the universe. I'm going to think about it like that from now on. That's awesome. I mean, because I think at the time people are like, what are you doing?
Sure. It's very hard to be your own self in this current world because they really want the copy and the paste, and like, you have your time to be like divergent, and we really need you to be predictable now. Right.
Yeah. And so everyone's like, what are you doing? So in corporate, I was very good at what I did, but I kind of, again, did it in the non-traditional way. And in a meeting with my boss, I was expressing something. I wish I could remember what I was talking about, but I was complaining about the internal sales system and CRM to support our work and to support our efforts. And I was expressing this. And in this meeting in front of a lot of people, he basically yelled at me and said, Celi, stop trying to fix the system and just do your job. And I think that he was trying to, scare me into submission, but my nerdy, engineer brain went, fix the system. Is that a thing? Like, are there people who fix systems? Because that sounds like so much fun.
Fabulous.
So, true story, in that moment, I was like, I'm not offended, but what is a system? I need to research. Like, are there people that fix? So I went home that day after work and literally started researching who are the people in the world that fix systems. Like, what is that? I want that job. Because to me, it was so obvious. If you have this very small team trying to sell a very difficult product that's very expensive, and you need them to be focused on relationship building, because, hey, by the way, guys, sales is all about relationship. So you need them to be focused on the other person, the person's needs, being able to deliver on the other person's needs and pain points. Like, it was all relationship building sales. It was very complex deals that we were closing. And those deals took a very long time to close. So it was a very frustrating, very stressful job. The last thing I needed to be worried about is spending then hours inputting data into the CRM because it was so outdated and it was a dinosaur.
Understood.
And in my brain, I was like, duh. Like, my systems were like, can we just fix this? Can we just talk to the IT team and spend maybe a week, right? Like, recode it in a way that's going to make the system support our efforts. And everyone was just like, what are you smoking? Like,
oh, fascinating.
Go back to the field. And so I was like, I'm clearly talking to the wrong people. Like, I'm in the wrong place. Right. I was just like, oh, I'm in the wrong place. Because
like, they couldn't hear you. They couldn't
hear it.
It's obvious what it would fix. Right.
So then I went on this journey of, what is a systems fixer? Who is that? Who are they in the world? Excuse me. And then I found this word, operations. And then I
have to say that you're decoding terms that I think scare away service-oriented business people. Like, operations and systems can seem something that is very cold. And so to hear someone that understands that you're actually being uplifting, I know that's like a trite word, but you were uplifting the sales team. I mean, your goal was to make the revenue easier for everyone. So it's not woo-woo, even if the concept is, right? You're understanding that operations can include the human, which I think a lot of people don't understand. I think it's like they bend the human towards the operations as opposed to making a synergistic system. Am I hearing this correctly?
No, that's 100% right. And that is 100% what I do. Can I hire you to talk about what I do?
I listen to people. That's what I do.
I have a new job for you. And that is absolutely right. I think we think of systems in a certain way. And in my brain, it's like, no. The system is just the vehicle that, this is what I always say, the system is the vehicle that sets you free.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
So now let's go back to old systems, rituals. Is it about the ritual in itself, or is it about the transcendence?
That's right.
Right?
Right. Absolutely.
Artists kind of get this, but they don't think about it. When you are, or a sport, when you're learning a sport, is it about the drill? Right. Like soccer. I know that you watch soccer a lot, right? Is it about the drills, or is it about getting out there on that field and looking like a ballerina?
That's exactly it. People don't understand that.
Dancing through people.
It's the freedom. Discipline gives you freedom when employed correctly.
Yeah. And so systems give you freedom.
I can hear that.
We get really stuck in thinking that it's about the system. And people think that I'm like a systems girl. And I'm like, no, I'm a freedom girl.
Oh, I love this.
Like, no, I want to build the minimum viable system that's right for you and right for your business to set you free.
I would imagine then that would ask the entrepreneur, which this is necessary. This is not like to be vulnerable about the truth, because once you unearth if your system is working correctly or not, then you start to see the gaps of what you've invested in. Or like, I had a friend that I have a very simple online course. I love her. Like, she works for me. Like, I had a great person to help me with it a little bit, to understand that, like, I don't need a whole bunch of bells and whistles for what it was doing, right? It was more important for the content. And so I made a mention to a friend, and they showed me the behind the scenes of their online course. This is relating directly to you. Nobody else would be able to update it. And between what I've heard you talk about and the online course, I was like, you have to fix this. He's like, I can't. I'm like, no, you're not going to grow. I'm shocked that I'm the person, and you and the Wit and Wire, I'll just say who it is. She's really great with like podcasts and stuff, have helped in a similar way. This is what I want people to hear, is that there are people that can help you in business that are educators. And I would put you in, that's a term I love because I've been an educator. So if I feel like you're trying to help me, I put you in the category more of an educator, even if you're a business person, right? I'm like, oh, you're educating me. So you're bringing me along and empowering me to, in some ways, not need you. And then I'll cycle back when I've mastered that level to come.
That's what I tell all my clients, is my goal here is to get you to begin to think about your business as the strategist, as the head strategist.
Right.
So that you no longer need me.
That's success. And then you reach another bump, and then you're like, oh, I don't know how to get to the next bump. So let me, hey, Ceil, can we do another phase so I can go from B to C? Like, that makes total sense to me.
That's what I do in this world, I think. And absolutely, I think that your example is relevant. And I have clients that I help that do this all the time. Well, I took this course and I worked with this coach and I did this online thing and I bought these templates, and so I'm using all these things in the back end, and I'm supposed to use all these things in the back end. Right. So I always say, what's actually the problem that we're trying to solve?
There we go.
Number one. And in terms of data, when it's about data and what we're looking at in terms of metrics and what are we measuring and what's the question we're trying to answer?
Do you think, and I would put, you can use me as an example, because I would say, for me, if you asked me that question, in a lot of ways, I would not have an answer. Do you think a lot of people have the answers to those questions?
No, I help them realize,
right?
Oh, part of my work is I help them realize, oh, I'm throwing all this stuff at my business because I haven't taken the time to go, what's the problem I'm actually trying to solve here? Or I'm looking at dashboards of Google Analytics and I'm overwhelmed and I don't know what I'm looking at, or even my Instagram analytics, and I don't know what I'm looking at because I haven't bothered to go, well, what's the question I'm trying to answer?
I would say some of us don't even know to ask that question. We're just like, I have to keep up with the things. Like, I have something I've
If everyone knew to ask that question, I would be out of a job.
So can you have a quiz, don't you? Don't you have something like if someone is listening to this and they've hit the point of like, oh, I don't know that. We don't want you to go, oh, and retract and pull back, right? So isn't the quiz that you created somehow helping me understand an entry point? Is that
absolutely. So I created the scalable business quiz. It's just to understand. I created a framework of 10 pillars because it gives you get a grade that ends up being 100 because we all understand that system, right?
Right.
We understand what's my score out of 100.
Right.
So I created a framework, and the quiz gives you a taste of that framework and gives you a sense of where you are in each pillar of business, because a lot of times, as you said, we're keeping up with the times and we're keeping up with all the things we're being told, but we might be focusing on certain areas and not focusing on the area in our business that we need to focus on that's actually going to move the needle. So
did I also hear you say sometimes people might think they're ready for you, but they're not? And how do you know that? Like, how are you aligned? Like, why have you told people that? Like, if they're not sure yet. So if they take the quiz, I've heard you say, and I think this actually helped me trust you more, which is why I'm asking the question. So orient where it's coming from. I see you put out a lot of great content. So if people are interested, I know like you talk on Instagram, like they should follow you. I'll put in the things, but what's your Instagram? You can just say it now.
It's I am Don Celia, which is DonCelia.
So you talk, like, people can submit questions on Tuesdays. You have tips, right? So you're accessible. So I want to make clear that like when I read your content or I've seen your presentations, you're very accessible, but I've also heard you say you might not be ready to work with me yet. So can you tell me how you're accessible, but then also really clear that somebody, like, can you talk to me about that in a way that I felt was rather enlightening for someone who is looking to work with you?
Yeah. Well, I think I work with people who basically have product market fit in their product.
What does that mean?
So what that means is that you've created a product and you've sold it to more than just your friends or family.
Yeah, that's valid.
Right? And that you are actually getting people results with your product. It could be a physical product, it can be a digital product, it could be a course, whatever that is. And that you're creating traction in a market, right? So it's not that I don't work with people who are, so basically you have a business, you're selling it, you have revenue, and now you're coming up against your own limitations and the things you don't know that you don't know about business.
Which is a different place to be.
And that's what my sweet spot. And so typically I say, I help 6-figure earners get to 7 figures. So that's kind of what I do. Do I work with people in the earlier stages? Absolutely. If they have the money to invest in me. I'm actually now making a few digital products for that earlier stage, because I always feel bad that some people, I've been asked to build some things out for that group. But what I do say, and I think it's important to say this because so many people get frustrated, when you are in the proof of concept stage, product market fit stage, where you are proving that your product gets a certain demographic, a result that they desired, these are all keywords. You're getting a certain person a result that they desired, okay? That stage can take 2 to 3 years.
It doesn't take 6 months like they say on Instagram.
It does not take 6 months like they say on Instagram. So I also say this, I'm very honest about, be careful who you pay to coach you. Be careful what they're promising and what they're saying, because it does take some time to get your proof of concept down. And that is a beautiful journey.
And a necessary one.
And so a necessary one.
Not dumping all these resources into an area that's not viable. You might just have to pivot a little bit. Am I right?
You have to pivot and test and iterate and pivot and test and iterate until you're like, I've put my genius into this product and it gets people a result and people are giving me referrals and testimonials. I'm onto something. Okay, cool. Now let's go build that. So the reason I don't work with people in that stage is because it takes a long time. People often get frustrated. And then they get frustrated with their coach, right? Because you didn't grow me fast enough. And I think probably a lot of these online business coaches that are saying, oh, we just do one exercise and then you have your product and you're good to go. They are probably on the back end getting a lot of pushback from clients that are not having those results. So the truth is, proof of concept takes some time, and most people get frustrated in that process. And I like to work with people who are ready to scale something and build an actual business that's for their life, that's feeding into their life and supporting them and supporting their bigger vision of who they are and the life they want to live. So there's nothing wrong with the proof of concept stage. I love that stage. It's really fun. There is a way to do it, and it takes patience and resilience.
I think that's important because a lot of times people want to talk about the higher, the destination aspect of it, but they like brush over. And so then everyone was just like, well, I want that, so I'm just going to jump. And they're like, well, why am I not landing? And to give that Witten Wire person, I give her a lot of credit because, I mean, I don't know. And this isn't I know you don't know her, so it's not fair, but I would see her being your proof of like she broke down for us. Like, if you have an idea, like fail fast. It's kind of like that. I think people need to return to the idea of do something really simple, validate it in the market. You're better off because people want to spend like 20 hours in Canva and make something really beautiful, but then they don't spend any time on curriculum or product or the service. It's all on. So I wanted to ask you that because I want people to see you as a resource and understand where to build and scale up to you, and then if you're creating other products and they want to go on to Tipsy Tuesday, I think there's ways to push yourself. If you're not there yet, you put yourself in conversations. You don't have to be in a coaching program. You can be on podcast and conversations and start hearing what are the things that I want to be, the questions I want to be answering later, and start getting your growth up to that place. I think it's helpful.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I was talking to somebody recently who wants to come on Tipsy Tuesdays. I was like, she was asking me in private for advice. I was like, will you please come on Tipsy Tuesdays and do this publicly for people, because people need to hear it. But as she was talking about her frustration of this new coaching business that she's building, she started crying. And she said, I'm so sorry for the tears. And I said, why?
Mm-hmm.
This is what every single entrepreneur goes through. It is a journey. And that stage that you're in of just figuring out your offer and how to speak to it so that people understand it and that people understand you're the solution to their problem, and finding the words and finding where you sell and where you speak to and who you speak to, like that is a journey, and tears are allowed. And that is just a part of.
Is that how the spirituality comes into your systems and operations?
Absolutely. So I think, in my personal experience, entrepreneurship is a spiritual journey. And
I agree with you, but why would you say that?
The reason I think that is because at every stage of your business, you're going to be confronted with yourself. And that's why I love this. She was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry for the tears. I'm so sorry that I'm crying. First of all my clients cry at some point. So it's all good. Tears are totally welcome here. It's just normal. And it just means that you are human, and it means that you are on this journey. Congratulations.
All of you is there, because it's actually a holistic system if you're allowed to emote, and it clears the pathway for making the strategic decisions.
Yeah. And at every stage that you encounter in your business, you will encounter a new facet of yourself. Right? That early stage, the reason people get so frustrated is because most often what they're encountering and they're building up resilience around is rejection. Right? Because when you're testing something and it doesn't land and it doesn't fly, or it doesn't, like all these people on social media being like, my first launch made me 200K. And you're like, well, shit, I didn't do that in my first launch, so therefore I suck.
Right.
That's the journey. That's the journey you're on. You get to, and if you pass, oh, it doesn't mean I suck. I'm actually just iterating and testing and finding my feet and just starting on this journey into the desert. I just took off my sandals to step into the desert. That's where you're at. If you realize that's where you're at and you keep going, every step, you're going to encounter a new piece of yourself.
Very well
the
said.
Money thing, right? Self-worth. What does money mean to me? What does money mean in the universe? Do I believe I deserve it? So every stage of the journey, you're encountering pieces of yourself that come up. The more you know that and realize that and take your business on that way, you'll actually have an easier journey. The people who have a really frustrating journey is where they're like, I want to stay the same, but I want my business to grow. I want to stay the same. I want to have all my shit. I want to have all my baggage. I want to have my ego. I want to have my pride. I still want everybody to like me, and I want to be a millionaire. And it's like,
yeah,
we all do.
Yeah.
And this journey will strip you of it all.
You had said something about having clients, and if I have the numbers wrong, but I think I have the message right. So just retweak the wording if I'm wrong. But you had said, Kate, like I have clients that make 2 million a year. They're living paycheck to paycheck, or some iteration of that, right? Yeah. And I was shocked. And can you speak to what, if you remember what you said to me, like a little bit about it's about worth? Can you address that a little bit? Because I thought that was super helpful, because I think some people that are in the iteration phase think it's going to all go away. Like what you just said. I guess I'm asking you to rephrase what you just said. Do you know what I mean? Like once I have the money, it will go away. And by the way, if you think that, well, one, money does make some problems go away. I'm not saying all, I'm not saying core essence, but I want to acknowledge that if you don't have constant stress of that,
tier, fine. But it is one of the easier tiers of what is masking other tiers that are like other things that are waiting to emerge, right? So,
100%.
yeah.
100%.
Can you speak a little bit to that, please?
Well, that's actually a fun example because that's where the systems brain and the spiritual brain get to braid, like and get to meet, right? Because there's the systems aspect of that, which is, hey, let's look at your numbers and let's look at your profitability. And that particular client who I was referencing has a 2.2 million revenue a year business. Let's look at the offers. She makes bespoke offers, which means it's a lot of work to do a proposal and close the proposal and all that. And when we really broke down her offers, they weren't really profitable, which is what that means is the amount of money she makes at the end of the day after paying her team and paying expenses and paying what she actually makes, what her business makes, is very little. So she was running a business that forces her to work really hard. And I say this, you didn't start a business, you just gave yourself a 9-to-9 job. Beautiful. Because when you're working really hard in order to make that money, but there isn't enough profit coming into the business for it to grow and expand, the business that you've built requires of you to work. And anybody who's a business owner knows they don't work 9 to 5, they work 9 to 9. Right. Or in my case, I work 7 to 9 sometimes, or I've been there. I've done that in my past. Right. So, so there's the systems part. So, right on the piece of paper, we have the systems part. It's a profitability issue. Let's look at the spiritual part of why have we built a business that has a profitability issue? And then it comes down. So then we get to talk about that. Oh, I have a belief that I have to work really, really hard to make money.
Right.
Cool. Right. I have a belief that having money and having excess makes me a bad person, because profitability would look like money in the bank to actually grow and to grow the business and to have a little bit of ease. I have a belief that it can't be easy. I have a belief that it has to be hard. Right. So then the spirit, so that's where like my two favorite things in the world marry every day, because everything that you're doing in a systems or operations level, or how you're operating in your business, we can fix on an operational level. But by golly, if we don't look at the internal system, your internal system, I call it the system of you, and why the system of you allowed yourself to kind of just build a business and not look at the profitability, then it's almost like it comes back to spirituality. You can change your clothing and put on a great outfit, but if you haven't healed the inner child and, you know, your inner world, you're just wearing a new outfit. And so
it doesn't change the frequency of what you're living. You can look externally exquisite and be miserable. Yeah, it doesn't have to be that strong. But when you said you had a client that, you know, on the outside, if you're pulling in $2.2 million, and then I hear that's even more confusing to the person, because you're like, look, on paper, I should be fine. Where is the problem? I would imagine.
And that was exactly kind of her. And here's the fun part. Here's the kicker. She was like, my previous business coach didn't seem to find any problems because I'm at this revenue. I was like, okay, well, your previous business coach didn't bother to do a breakdown and see if your business is profitable.
And that's the beauty of the systems that you're talking about, because we have, it goes into our assumptions, which I can now hear from where we started the call about how those would braid together, because you're untangling where the emotionality and the the subconscious is always where it's at. You know, if whoever comes on this podcast, we always get to the subconscious, because if you're looking to have a new iteration of yourself, which is the nature of being human, the subconscious has to come along, or else it's really not a new iteration. Like you said, you're changing your outfit, but nothing has actually changed. Similarly, you can go someplace and see somebody that's just wearing regular shorts and whatever, and you would never know they were a millionaire, but their essence is emanating, I'm cool. Like, I don't need to change the external to emanate because I'm moving. And I think what I'm hearing from you, it's asking, back to the place where you're saying, what is the problem you're trying to solve? Those are actually the internal questions. So now I can hear how you're using business strategy and analysis, one, to, in a skills product-based way, actually help your business. Hello, we're not just talking about this and not.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's so fun because really what I really do at a core level is I just use operations and systems to get to your subconscious.
There you have it.
That's what I'm really doing.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like I had a client who's a really, really big, beautiful, amazing, gorgeous confidence coach. She's an influencer. She has 130,000 followers right now on Instagram. And she kept doing all these things and adding all these extra bells and whistles to her processes and her systems and her sales system, the whole thing. And I was like, why are you doing these things I didn't tell you to do? Oh, because this other coach, I have the training from this other coach before, and I have to build that funnel and I have to do that thing. And I was like, okay, for the record, I just want you to know I did not say to do that. Right? Like, but she needed to go through that.
Mm-hmm.
Right? She needed to do all that and then realize, oh, it's not working. Let me maybe listen to you and do what you've told me to do. Right. And I was like, okay, cool. And you're on board now because you did all, it's so, like, imagine like doing all this like efforting and it not working. But when we got down to it and we were able to simplify it and start making money, I was like, can we talk about why you felt the need to do all that? Let's have a real heart to heart. And here's what's really interesting though. She was like, oh, because if I'm not busy all the time and working all the time, I would have to face my loneliness. And I was like, amazing. Cool. So can we address your loneliness without having to work like a maniac? Wouldn't that be a lot easier? And she's like, yeah, I guess so. Right? Yeah. Now, she works 2 days a week now.
Right. And it's true freedom because it's not just her work schedule.
And this was only a few months, because the moment we were able to go, hey, why do you feel like you need to do all this? And she was able to get real. She was like, oh, shit. Oh, like it was like, oh. So I was like, how about we just try this super simple system? Let's remove all the noise. Let's just get rid of all that. Let's see if who you are and the product that you sell and the people that you serve, let's see if it actually sells and makes money. She's making a lot of money right now, by the way, without funnels, without sales pages, without all that stuff. She turned all that stuff off. And she's working 2 days a week because she realized she was trying to fill a gap, like cover up something. And we actually are doing that. Our relationship to money, we're doing that in the weird way it shows up. So I love using the system of like, oh, let's clean up that system. Let's simplify it. Let's see what's underneath there for you.
So for the listener now that is like their mind has been blown because they can see where we started, where you said, what was the first thing we were asked to do in the Bible reference was to name things, right? And so now you helped your client name the thing that was actually capturing her, right? It wasn't the sales funnels. It was the loneliness. What would be like a small, like tapas meal size resource, like a book, like what's an author that you enjoy that you could recommend to somebody that doesn't have to be a direct correlation? Because I actually believe sometimes if you're just, I say writers need a high inspiration diet. Like it doesn't have to be a business book, but just something that they can, until your book is written, and that they can imbibe in this moment for that, because I think that's actually the thing that starts to magnetize, like what you intake, like listening to your concepts, maybe going on to Tipsy Tuesday, maybe taking your quiz if that feels like, I thought it was really educational, and yeah, just taking in this vibe of like less is actually more if you have the right focus and you have the right systems and you're including yourself. I mean, that's what I'm hearing. It's not just the business and then I come along when I've worked hard enough to be deserving of it, like I'm deserving now. And I really appreciate you taking the time and sharing your wisdom with us.
Yeah. Let me look over at there's so many good business books. So what I'm going to do is tell you the books that most lit up my brain. There's this book called Wired to Create.
Okay.
Totally not a business book. But there were things in there that my brain was like, oh, I totally get. Now I'm starting to understand why, as a creative, I was also a systems builder. And that book was really, and I need to read it again. That book was just really fun for me to read. A really great business book that I think people should read if they have a business is Profit First.
Oh, I've heard a lot of good things about that.
I think it's something that we skip, and even a lot of business coaches skip, because they're trying to sell you their formula and they're trying to sell you the thing that's building their business. And no one is bothering to look at, are you building a business or are you giving yourself a job? Or do you have a hobby? Right? So Profit First, I think, is a good book that breaks. There's so many, that's written by Mike Michalowicz, and he's written a lot of business books. And the other one that I really like is, what's it called? Leadership and Self-Deception.
Ooh,
that's a good one. Also about business and business leadership. And it's also kind of the importance of mindset and people skills and soft skills to grow a business and how relevant they are.
That's helpful.
Yeah. So each of those is very different lanes, but to me, they've been very rich on my journey.
Well, that's what I want people to take from this is there's the big picture, but you can actually start the big picture with like a very small sip. Like you can, if you're inspired by this, then like make sure they follow you on Instagram for the next Tuesday and like pick up a book, and you don't have to read it within 5 weeks. You can take 6 months if you need, but bring the commitment to that change and self-investigation. You can bring it in very easily, until you're ready for the next momentous step. So
yeah. And also you can DM me and come join me on Tipsy Tuesdays, because the whole point of it is that people come and ask me their business question without me knowing what the question is.
Fun.
And we just riff in real time. Yeah. And try to solve the problem, right? Solve the real problem.
Thank you for taking time to be with us today. I appreciate all that you're sharing with us.
Yeah. Thank you. That was so fun. You let me talk about the two things, the two worlds that I love so much. So thank you.
You're welcome.
That's what we love to do here at Rebirth. We love to have people talk about what they love because it uplifts everyone. If you've enjoyed this episode or you found some value in it, do us a favor. Hit subscribe, leave us a review, or share on a social media channel, because we need to be creating and choosing what we want to see more of. And be sure to check out Celi on one of her Tipsy Tuesdays on Instagram. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you back here soon.